Hi, and welcome to Eternal Love of Drama. I'm Linda, and this is a channel where two drama enthusiasts share our deeply uninformed but very strong opinions about Chinese dramas. We don't know anyone that works in Chinese drama production. We don't know anything about Chinese pop culture, really, other than what we've watched in these Chinese dramas. But that doesn't stop us from having very strong opinions about things that we have watched, things that we've refused to watch, and everything in between. So each week we give an award to a drama that is a superlative or an element of a drama that's a superlative in all the dramas we've watched. So what is this week's award?
This is going to be really fun. We're going to talk about subtitles today. Now, you and I sometimes we sometimes watch dramas and sometimes we just have them playing in the background. And I think that's because we know enough Chinese that like a normal conversation can just be playing and we kind of get what's going on. But like, as they become more available on Netflix and Prime, and as like some of my non-Chinese speaking friends have found out that I've started to watch Chinese drama, it's been like interesting to talk to them about it and like think about what makes TV accessible. And we also both watch foreign films that are not in Chinese or English and read the subtitles. So what's been really fun about Chinese dramas is when we have been watching them, some of the translations are hilarious and some of them are cringeworthy. And some of them are actually really fun. So what we decided to do is a montage or an award series on some of the best subtitles that we've seen. Now we had to do some extra homework, and obviously there are a lot of contenders for this, but we wanted to discuss some of our favorite or least favorite, subtitling.
So I want to say before you start, shout out to people that do subtitles. Some channels have these done by volunteers. So shout out to those people, and also shout out especially to folks like Productive Procrastination, who do it really well.
Yes. Now the thing about the Productive Procrastination site is there's often like translation notes and like commentary on like the cultural or linguistic context, which you actually learn quite a lot. Like I didn't know a lot of the things, so those are like really great. And
we'll link to that site if you want to check it out. We highly recommend.
Definitely. Okay, so I'll just kick it off with my number one, I guess, pet peeve in all of Chinese subtitling, and that's child. And this is usually when someone is calling someone gongzi, right? And it's meant to be respectful. But child is an antiquated Old English, child with an E is antiquated Old English. And it technically means what it's supposed to mean, but it's just not a used phrase. And so like one of the things that we've thought a couple of things were better, like sometimes like calling someone master or young master for like 少公主 or like sir. And also like it's interesting, and we couldn't find an example of this one, but like sometimes there's like an 二公子 or a 三公子, right? And the translation is always like second child or third child, which is also technically true, but there's not a need for that level of precision in English. It's a sir simply is good enough. So that's my number one pet peeve, and it always kind of cracks me up a little when I see it on the screen. What about
Yeah,
you?
I think that there are some for me that are like, okay, technically that's not wrong, but it's not how people talk, or it's not like, especially if you're watching a drama and you're reading the subtitles really quickly as people are talking. Like I think it serves you to be less precise and less like technical with your language. So I do have an example of a time when it's just wrong. So this is from Dating in the Kitchen. This person is a chef, and those are not shallots.
They look like beets to me.
They're beets.
Yeah.
There's multiple. It moves, so I had trouble getting a good screenshot. But those are very, very clearly beets.
Yes. All right. What else?
My next example is from The Sleepless Princess, where this person is also a princess, but they've decided that they're going to call her Infanta for Junzu, which technically is a princess who is not an heir to the throne. but the title of this drama is Sleepless Princess, and it is about a princess who is not the heir to the throne, who is called Princess. And for some reason, this person uses the ancient Spanish and Portuguese title Infanta.
Okay.
My next example is from The Legend of the Condor Heroes 2017 version. Spar for wife. I mean, technically, Biwu is like a martial arts competition, and Zhao Qing means that you will get like a bride at the end. So it's not wrong. It's just funny, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you've seen other translations of this. What did you say?
I think, like, what did I say? Kung Fu dating or something like that? Yeah.
I feel like I said that maybe too. Yes. And then my next example, which is, I have to say, one of my favorites from Love 1,000 Years, just this hippocampus. In the 16th century, yes. And I don't know, I guess this drama probably took place in an imaginary world closer to the 16th century than now. Mm-hmm. But
that's a seahorse.
Hippocampus. That's not really what we use the hippocampus for anymore.
It's also a very large seahorse. Now, I didn't watch this particular drama, and I don't know. I should, like, if I was more informed, if we had done homework, I would have Googled how big our seahorse is, but I've always thought they were like this big.
Well, that's a seahorse spirit. This is a magical one. That's a seahorse spirit. The next one I have, just like, I don't know, it's not wrong. It just is like, this music is blockbuster, but it's so homicidal. Like, who says that? Nobody says that. And yeah, you're trying to match like period and how people talk in the period, and they do that in the Chinese, but also you're trying to give people an experience reading. So weird. And then this is one of my favorites, also from Under the Power, which I really enjoyed. One of these is a subtitle. One of these is not a subtitle. To translate 人缘互在 as 人缘互在 is maybe a little lazy. Honestly, they do explain, this is a Confucian quote, and they explain it in the scene. They say it like throughout, like in the subtitles, but like this particular subtitle felt unnecessary.
Okay, so of all of these, who would you, so these are your candidates. Hippocampus. That's pretty fun. Okay, well, my award goes to not one particular scene, but one translator, right? So I will give my award to Harold Mcgill, who has translated the 2019 Heavenly Saber Dragon Sword. And I didn't realize this. So this was a drama we'll talk about in a second that I had playing on the background until like I started watching a few of the episodes, and I realized how funny the translations were. So in this first scene, like the two of them have just become like shipwrecked, right? And this is very funny. Never let go, Rose. Come on, right? Like this is an excellent use of like like a cultural reference from like modern day American culture. So that's excellent, and it actually captures very well this scene. So never let go, Rose. The next one is a little bit of commentary. Now, this is actually a correct translation of some people just don't understand it. And I like the little, also including the translator note there, which is good because, you know, the doctor has just explained a bunch of medical things, which were also translated correctly, but this was just some fun commentary. And this, like last fun scene, I guess you pointed it out, the Zoroastrian has threatened the Yuan army with me. I mean, this is just great.
Ancient religions are always threatening my army.
With me. But also he does funny things, like just throughout, like sometimes it's medical stuff, sometimes it's more ancient Chinese medical stuff, sometimes it's ancient Chinese poetry. And it's good, like, because he, you know, I just really enjoyed this translator's notes on the subtitles. So Harold Mcgill gets my award.
Well, I think it's interesting because sometimes, like, and one of the ones that we reviewed, Mistruth, that I really liked, the first time I watched it, they had I guess like the rough draft of the subtitles up there. And whenever she was doing the autopsies, the subtitles just, and those are the parts that my Chinese is not really sophisticated enough to fully understand. And so I was looking at the subtitles and it would say medical stuff.
Yeah.
And I would be like,
and you wanted to solve the crime, so you wanted to know like what the cause of death was, but just
medical stuff apparently was the cause of death. But and then they would do the same thing with like poetic stuff, which is another thing that, you know, I struggle as like someone with no formal Chinese education to understand. So not helpful, not the most helpful subtitles. But yes, shout out to the subtitlers. I actually I would be hard pressed to give the award to anything other than Never Let Go Rose. But Hippocampus, I think, is pretty great too. So, all right.
All right, so let's talk about a drama then. So what drama are we going to talk about today?
So this week we're going to review Heavenly Sword Dragon Slaying Saber, the 2019 version. So this is part of the like Condor Heroes trilogy written by Jing Young, who is one of the most famous Chinese novelists. And this is a classic. And it has been made into drama form many, many times. So we're talking about the 2019 version. So the quick plot synopsis is that there's a legend that says whoever gets this heavenly sword, the Yi Tian Jian, and the dragon slaying saber, the Tu Long Dao. So this drama in Chinese is called Yi Tian Tu Long Ji. So whoever gets these weapons gets to rule the world. So there's a guy, Zamuji, who's our protagonist, who is orphaned at a young age due to various schemes of various people trying to get these two weapons. And he grows up like a really like nice, good, non-violent person who doesn't really want to be involved in these struggles, but finds himself caught up in the middle of them. It's a really interesting story. As he like moves through trying not to be involved, but also trying to take care of the people that he loves and cares about. It is, as I mentioned, a classic Chinese novel. It's got all the elements: star-crossed lovers, good versus evil, families being killed, secret martial arts manuals that people stumble upon, and if you're Zamuji, multiple times in many ways. Mongolians, Persians. It's got everything.
And you know, I'll just say too, to like add to this. So we did watch this when we were little, I think, an earlier version. And this is not a review that is a comparison because neither of us really remember it. Although you did think that you found it, and like this idea of like production quality, etc., is not anything that we care about. So this is not a comparison.
It's old. It's a little older. So
yeah. And also like I just want to say something too about like the novel writing. I think there's an excellent video that like Avenue X puts out that explains like Jing Young novels and their influence. But I think the summary, and Wikipedia also has a really great page on it as well. This is like my attempt at being informed, is Wikipedia. But you know, he's very prolific and he had a lot of political opinions. So I think that's something that I think about a little bit, but anyway, we'll rant about that later.
Yes. Well, shout out to Avenue X. Also check out Avenue X if you're interested in YouTube things about Chinese drama.
So tell me like some of the things that like what did you think overall?
So one of my first thing is like there's, as you mentioned, we watched this when we were kids and there's so much nostalgia. Like as I was going through, like I was in the beginning, I definitely was like, I don't remember this at all. I thought I would remember, but then like every time a new character was introduced, I'm like, oh yeah, Jing Mao Shi Wang, I know that person, and Chen Kun, and like, you know, like I recognized like all the names and like the like manual, the Jiuying Senjing, and like the you know, all of the like these like terms and names, like they all like, I was like, oh yeah, I like know that. That's like in my brain for some reason. So I feel like there's a real strong like nostalgia thing for me. And it's like one of these things like that we watched as kids that made me really appreciate this genre. Yeah, so there's a strong nostalgia thing for me. What about you?
Okay, the kids in this are adorable. And I don't like remember enough about the other version that we watched when we were little to know this, but a lot of the story happens before like the like Zamuji main lead shows up on the scene. Like he shows up like halfway, right? But like earlier versions, there's like two kid Zamujis, right? And both of those kids are so cute, especially the littlest one where he's like 10 years old. 10-year-old Zamuji is adorable. And like actually his like 10-year-old Zozuro friend is like super cute too, and like he really steals the show for me. And even like I think like 13 or 14-year-old Zamuji is pretty adorable too. So I think that the kids did an excellent job, and whoever that little kid that played 10-year-old Zamuji is deserves like some special prize.
The kid parts are like really fun to watch. They're so cute, and the actors do a really great job. So I really enjoyed those parts also.
Mm-hmm.
I also really enjoy, I mean, I feel like so many dramas that we watch are like based on, you know, IP novels that are like internet things that are produced like more prolifically and quickly. And like, I think that these novels were written over like long periods of time. They have undergone like massive, like, um, a lot of work was put into creating this very complex world. You know, like this is part of a trilogy that is non like, it's really interesting. The trilogy, like this story is the, I believe the last one, and it takes place like 100 years after the first one. So it kind of spans, it's like epic in its expanse. And I think that, you know, just like it's a very comprehensive world that's created. The character, like everything that happens is like related and complicated, and it's a good like story. You really want to like delve into this like really interesting plot that's multidimensional. So I really like that about this too.
So I'm gonna say something that I just said earlier. I really liked the person who did the subtitles for the YouTube version, Harold Mcgill, on his channel. I just found that made it like super fun to watch.
What else did you like about it?
I don't, okay, so this is going to straddle our line between things that we liked and things that we didn't like. So this is like an interesting thing that I guess we'll rant about this in our election day special. But you know, there's a theme. Okay, so this is really interesting. So the reason to Google Jing Young is because you know he does have some like political opinions, right? He wrote during a period of political unrest when a lot of things were happening, and he was like watching you know change in society, right, from forms of government to like how like people interacted with each other to cultural values, right? So he really tried to, I think what he did was he created an ideal universe, like very much the same way that Tolkien did with the Lord of the Rings series. Is like he created a universe that not only had people in it that interacted with each other and told like folklore, like to create these epic stories, but also to communicate like messages about like values or political theory or, you know, just how people should treat one another and what does an ideal society look like. And what's interesting is in his novels, in this one in particular, and honestly can't remember the plot of the first two very well, so you'll have to like, I'll have to Wikipedia this if I'm wrong, but the second to last scene in this episode in this 2019 version is something that I really liked. So at the end of this, like I guess spoiler alert, Zamuji is the head of the Mingjiao, the Ming sect, which I guess they're translating as the Zoroastrians, and we can debate whether. But essentially, the motto of their like sect is to stand up for the people and to defend them against corrupt government, right? So he wins. They overthrow the Mongolians, who are like terrible rulers, and there's poverty, and so they've like helped the people by overthrowing the Mongolian government, and people are saying to him, you should be the emperor now, right? And so he's like, no, let me explain why. And so he's explaining the Ming sect's rules about how you can never be in government, and you can never have like large like property, like you can't be like a can't be like a titled nobility person. And the reason you can't is because when you're like a titled nobility and when you are in the government, you can't stand up for the people if the government is who's oppressing them, right? So he takes like his big sword, right? The dragon slaying saber, right? So he's interpreting what is a dragon slaying saber is it is like the mechanism that you use to slay the dragon, which a dragon is like, I guess, a symbol of the emperor, if the dragon or the emperor is abusing his people, right? And so he like symbolically cuts the like emperor's throne in half with the sword, right? And so I actually thought that was really interesting because that doesn't come up a lot in Chinese dramas usually.
Yeah.
And he does say this, right? He does like say like, well, you should always replace a bad emperor with a good emperor, right? And this is where I think like during our election day rant, we can talk more about this, but you know, it's all like he has a strong perspective that like there needs to be a third party to keep the government accountable for doing its job, which is to like make sure the people are doing well, right? And so I really liked that little speech that he gave there. You know, where I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it ties in with the whole symbolism. Here's another spoiler about like the whole idea between those two weapons. Like you had to like destroy them both with each other in order to get the power that comes to rule the world. Like that's like a thing that you don't, sorry, spoiler, that you figure out throughout the thing that like you actually have to like destroy these powerful weapons in order to gain more power.
Yes. So this is, so, you know, I like the government accountability, you know, speech, but I also thought like, I'm still a little bit like about the, why do you always like, why do you make it seem like the people need an emperor?
It's well, because Imperial China, but you know, but it's really interesting. And I'll sort of like tie into one thing that I don't like, which is kind of like in these novels, like the way that like Mongolians are portrayed as like this like, you know, barbaric enemy that are, and like the whole thing with imperialism, you know, when the Han people in all of these ancient things are talking about Tongyi Tiansha, right, to like unite the world, like what they're talking about is uniting the world under my rule. Like they're talking about like everybody will become my subjects, and like is there peace that comes along with like people becoming one country? Yeah, maybe, but like is everyone happy about that? Does everyone thrive, or are people still being like, are people being oppressed? And like, is the whole system of having an emperor oppressive, right? So like, obviously these are our like Asian American 2020 thoughts, but like, I do think that, you know, Jing Young was a person who would write prolifically like essays and opinions about the state of the government and the world. And he wrote these novels because people, in order to get people to pay attention to his other writing. So he didn't start out, he started out as a journalist, not a novelist, in the 60s. So I do think that that's like, you know, is all relevant to these stories.
And I do think that I don't think that he necessarily is an imperialist either, because there are some of his novels where some of the more prominent characters are quote unquote foreigners, right? Where there is an exploration of like identity and like country, right? And so I think that like in some of these, like the Condor Hero ones in particular, there may be like a need to do this, and maybe like other writers are just as sophisticated and I don't give them credit for it. But if you keep certain elements simple, then you can explore other topics, right? So it very much is throughout a theme that he talks about like righteous versus evil sex, and like being a good person, and what does that mean? Like, does it mean that, like we talked about this with the Untamed, like you're color coded, right? Like if you belong to a righteous sect, does that make you a righteous person? Or like, I guess asked another way, like are you a righteous person because you belong to a particular sect or because you act in a certain way? And I think what they want you to see in this one is that even though they have foreign, I guess, roots, the Mingjiao has like the motto of the Mingjiao is to protect the people, and so they have a noble and righteous cause. And even if they are not like Chinese in origin, or they're not one of the official righteous
that
sects.
means nothing in ancient China, just to be clear, right? Like,
Yes.
I think, yeah, it's that whole like, and it's a great exploration because Zamuji, our protagonist, is a person whose mother came from Mingjiao or Tingjiao, and which is another like evil sect, and his father is like, from the like noble Udang sect, which is like heroic and blah blah blah. So like, what does that make him?
Right.
So I think it is an interesting, like it is like on theme of that, like this kind of like, I mean, he was a definer of this genre, right? Of like exploring like who people think are good and who people think are evil. One thing that I really, since you mentioned the Untamed, like a parallel that I guess is just like a genre across genre thing that like, that I can't stand, that happens so much in this, is like that whole mob mentality taking over. And like, and I don't know if this is intended as a commentary or as like just depicting like the normal way people behave. Like there will be one person in a crowd and they'll say, yeah, you have to kill her, and then everybody else will be like, yeah, kill her, like, or like marry her or whatever, right? So like there's so much of that that just like really like, what, like, do people not have like the ability to like individual, I don't know, I guess that's
No, I don't think so, because this is how like you get sucked into a little Facebook like thing about not getting a vaccine because smallpox is not real or something like that, right? I mean, this is how that happens.
Facebook and smallpox coexisted in the same timeline. I guess
this is
individual
real.
critical thinking is an ongoing problem that we have in the world.
We just have a different context, right? Because we're not storming the like town square. We're all on Twitter.
Yes. I would say that like there are powerful women here, and it also bothers me when powerful women have to be evil. And a person who shall remain unnamed, as I try for some ridiculous reason to not give spoilers for a story that everybody knows.
I think we should talk about it, because I think
she becomes the most powerful martial artist. She does so through like evil means, and then becomes just like totally evil. And she didn't start out that way, but like, I guess like I dislike that it's sort of suggesting that like powerful women have to be evil, or they have to come by their power in conniving ways. And then like, even though she becomes like one of the most powerful martial artists there is, like she's still like crippled by her love of our protagonist, and like how, it's just so like, I don't love how Jing Young treats women.
Because we also have an Ome sect leader that is just like every other, and she's got the eyebrow. She's got the eyebrows, and she makes her disciples swear to hate men, right? Like she does it to multiple of her disciples, where she would rather kill them than have them like a man.
And I'm like totally fine with that kind of like sect, like a man-hating sect, if you want to like talk about patriarchy and what it's done to women, especially like in ancient times, right? But that's not what they're talking about. The origin of this is always some individual like spurned love, right? And so because of my spurned love, I am going to like create this whole sect of like women martial artists and make every single person who has like no experience with men in their life join my sect and hate men. Like, there are good reasons to hate patriarchy, and it's never that. It's always like, this man didn't love me, and so I'm gonna make all these my subordinates hate men, which just is so offensive.
Well, in the case of the Ume sect leader, it was because one man killed the man she loved, or she thought, and so that was a little. So it's often to me illogical, and I realize that, like, you know, when it comes to like human relationships, it's not always ruled by logic in a way that I would like, but it's illogical, her hatred of men because of that incident, especially when it's
women are illogical.
Not happen, right? I mean, but that's to my point, right? And like, if like if it is right, so her first disciple, shoot, I can't remember her name, right, the little girl's mom, right? She like was saying that like she had to kill her, right, because she wouldn't return to the righteous way, because she wouldn't kill the guy she liked, even though the guy she liked like treated her with like a lot of respect, and loved her, and like would, you know, and it was like, if she actually wanted what was good for her disciple, like, is like that the right choice to have her make? And do you then kill her? I mean, it's completely illogical, right? It's completely illogical.
Yeah, I understand like being like so blinded by your own trauma that like you cannot see how anyone else could be happy loving a man. But like to go as far as like this was her favorite disciple and to just kill her because of that, like I don't it, but you know, I guess it's just driving home the point that women are forever ruled by our emotions and toyed, you know, flung this way and that by love and the resulting consequences. So I don't love that part of this, of any of I guess his whole trilogy and the way that women are depicted. And I mean, I guess I don't have a huge gripe with Zalmin, the Yuki Chen character, who is well, I don't know. I won't get into it because it was a while ago when I watched this. But anything else that you disliked about this drama?
I guess I think you covered it mostly. Oh, were you going to say more about the being trapped on an island with four women thing?
Oh my god! Oh my god! Just that. Like, so of course he ends up trapped on an island with four women that adore him and would do anything and die for him. Like, can we say written by a man? Anybody? I just roll my eyes at that whole thing. Like, of course that happens. Of course every woman is in love with our naive, heroic man.
Yeah. And like, and this goes back to like the illogic of it. Like, he's just nice to them, right? And they like fall for him. So it could be that in ancient China, you just don't interact with that many like men, or like there are not that many men that are kind. But do you have to fall in love with someone just because they are nice to you? And like, I feel like that's like not like a very practical way to live life, especially these days, right? Like, can you imagine like just every like person that's a male that is like kind to you? Like, that's like, I don't know, right? Hopefully people have in their lives more people that are total jerks. Yes. But you know, it's like a very impractical way to view the world.
Well, it's another interesting thing that comes up is like he was kind to some of them when they were children, and like there is sort of this like concept of what they call qingmei zuma, right? Like your childhood, your sweetheart, sweetheart or whatever, which like in some we could talk about this in other dramas, but like, you know, sometimes it's like your adopted brother or sister, and I'm like, wait, but is that what they mean by that? And like just to turn your, and I know that like in ancient China, the idea of like romantic love is very different than what the ideas that we have now. But the idea that somebody was nice to you as a kid, so you're romantically in love with them forever, and like your heart is like promised to them forever and ever, is odd to me. And I don't think that that's how people think of it. Really, I don't think that's realistic. right? Like I remember when I was 10, this boy was nice to me, so I will only ever marry him.
I feel like I don't know. And then what does this mean for like people who are mean to like boys when they were younger?
They're gonna grow up to be sect leaders with crazy eyebrows.
True. Okay, I want to say I want to say something about like the foreigners, and we've like kind of touched on this already, but like I just like I think that like part of this is like Chinese imperialism, but I just also think it's like Chinese drama making. I wonder if like there's like a weird like I don't want to say to go as far as to say this is like borderline racist or anything like that, but it's just a very bizarre characterization of people who are not Han Chinese. That goes in a lot of them, right? I think the one that peeved me the most is not in this drama. It's like in Mistruth when there's Persians and they're like quote unquote speaking like Persian to each other, which I think that's just made up mumbling noises, right? And like at least I like in this one that they made them speak Chinese with like an accent, right? And I think they do this in like
And
Longest
they
Day
are
in China.
actually not Chinese people. They are
Yeah. Yes.
white
Right.
looking
Because
people.
like because in some of them is like this weird like blackface thing going on, right?
Right. Or a Chinese person with a curly wig on.
Yes. Or like a mustache in that looks a certain way. So yeah.
I do think that like it is caricaturizing
Mm-hmm.
caricaturizing, that's probably not a word, but making a caricature of foreigners often. And I don't think that there is a sophisticated relationship with honoring and respecting um, different non-Han Chinese peoples. Um, and so I think that's something to like really think about. And like, it's interesting because if you look at, and this is one thing I do know from watching other YouTubers about Chinese pop culture, there's an actress named Jill Raba who is not Han Chinese. And I think that she is very, like, she's looked upon as so beautiful because she looks exotic. Um, and so on the one hand, they love that. And on the other hand, when they actually portray these people in dramas, it is, I don't know, but like I wasn't there. I don't know if this is accurate in any way. Like,
Well, this is what I think is interesting. So like Yuki is Mongolian, right? And she's like
my foot.
but like the character traits that they give her are that she's carefree, right? And that she is brave and she's bold and she's smart, right? So I like all of those things. And I think it's interesting that they make it so that like you can be unrestrained if you're not part of the Chinese culture. So that is something that I think is an interesting commentary. I don't think it's necessarily like good or bad as a reflection on the foreigners themselves, but just that in order to be like completely unrestrained by the society's rules, you have to not be a part of it. And so she is able to say what she thinks, right? Because like I think there are multiple times, and I can't put my finger on exactly one thing, where she like is either said herself or other people say this about her, is that she says what she thinks, which is rare, right? Or like it's because she's foreign that she can say what she thinks. And like I would think like, and I wonder like if the lesson is supposed to be like say what you think or like don't say what you think, right? So I don't know like what like the subtext is on that one, but
I do think maybe there's like this small obsession with these like with, because there are Mongolian women throughout, like or like, you know, non-Han women. And I don't know if this is like I mean, because I feel like all of this is like written from a male perspective. So I don't know if it's like a criticism that like Han Chinese women didn't have these kinds of freedoms, or like if it's like a yearning for this kind of freedom or this kind of woman. But like, yeah, it's interesting that that is the association. And I do think that there are some historical records that there were more freedoms and leadership opportunities for women in these kind of like um, border, you know, regions.
Yeah, and it's how a lot of them are filmed too, right? So the one that I often make fun of is Goodbye My Princess, right? But when they film her, right, it's like what attracted me to watch it in the first place is like the sweeping vistas, and she's riding a horse, and she's like free, and her hair's like, blowing, and it's like, and the sun is like warm, and it's like you want to be her, and you want to like ride a horse in the middle of the plains, right? And you want to be that free. But then like the women in the palace, on the other hand, they like have like hats and bow a certain way, and like have to drink tea with their hands over their like cups or whatever it is that they do. It's like the rules versus the not rules. So I think it's interesting, but I also think that it's interesting that they introduce like oh, and I'll say one more thing about the Mongolians is I think in Sudiao Yingsheng Zuan, which is the first one in the trilogy, there is actually a more robust, I think, like you do become more sympathetic because they show the family relationships within the Mongolian tribe where one of the guys grows up. And so you see him being like brothers with like the son of the leader there, as well as like, sort of torn in his identity between like being Chinese versus like being raised as like a Mongolian. So I think that's interesting. As like he was like, as a writer, wasn't trying to be unfair, I think.
Yeah, like so the trilogy spans like over 100 years, and it starts with one of our protagonists in the first novel growing up in Mongolia and with Mongolians, and then as the story progresses, like the Mongolians conquer China and they're in power in this one. So yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, it's just
I
weird.
don't know enough about history to comment on his political commentary. But would you watch this drama again? Would you recommend it? Thoughts, feelings to that end?
I mean, I probably would not watch it again, unless, I mean, except for like Harold McGill subtitles, because I find them to be very amusing. But I would recommend that other people watch it. Is it on Netflix or is it on Prime? I think it's on Prime. It's in Prime. It's on Prime in Cantonese, so you have to watch the subtitles. But I don't know who does the subtitling.
You can watch it on Netflix. It's on Netflix. No, sorry, not Netflix. YouTube.
Okay, YouTube. Watch it on YouTube, on the Harold McGill channels for the best subtitles ever. And so I would recommend that because it is a classic, right? And it is the person that created this entire martial universe concept, and it's a really interesting way to get an introduction into this kind of like this genre.
I think that I agree with you. I think that like classics have a place. Mm-hmm. And so it is worth watching if you've never seen it. There are many adaptations. This one's pretty decent.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched, I don't remember the one that we watched when we were kids. But I think that it is an important way to learn about the genre. And also, it's not the best of the genre that you'll ever see. So that's how I feel about it. It's important. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. If you've seen a version of this already, watch The Untamed. But anything else you want to say about Heavenly Sword Dragon Slaying Saber 2019?
No.
Okay. That's a begrudging no.
There are always things to talk about, but I think
in the interest of time. I will close by saying, if you like our channel, please feel free to subscribe. There's like a little bell thing that you can click and get notifications. We are going to have some special content coming up. We are going to be doing a Halloween special and an election day special. I'm not sure which will be scarier yet. Time will tell. We've mentioned this many times. So as part of our special Halloween content, I will be doing the evil female sect leader eyebrow tutorial. So watch out for that.
Yes.
And stay tuned for more exciting Chinese drama content.